My name is Anna Faroqhi. I've participated in several turtle events, even though fate did not allow me to be physically present at many of them. Through Turtle, I know Arnaud, who did 2 solo exhibits with work of mine and has become a friend. I knew Michael from New York. The last time I had really seen him in the flesh was 10 years ago, during the first Turtle event in London. It was then that I learned about his disease. 2 years ago, I was diagnosed with ovarian cancer, and since then, like Michael, have become a citizen of the kingdom of the sick, speaking with Susan Sontag. Just as Michael fought against becoming numbed by his disease through creating the Turtle event, I have started to draw a graphic novel on the course of events as a person with cancer. Susan Sontag, illness as metaphor. Illness is the night side of life, a more onerous citizenship. Everyone who is born holds dual citizenship in the kingdom of the well and in the kingdom of the sick. Although we all prefer to use the good passport, sooner or later, each of us is obliged, at least for a spell, to identify ourselves as citizens of that other place.
Mon nom est Anna Faroqhi. J'ai participé à plusieurs événements de Turtle, même si le sort ne m'a pas permis d'être physiquement présente à beaucoup d'entre eux. Grâce à Turtle, j'ai connu Arnaud qui a fait 2 expositions incluant mon travail et il est devenu un ami. Je connaissais Michael de New York. La dernière fois que je l'ai vraiment vu en chair et en os, c'était il y a 10 ans lors du premier événement de Turtle à Londres. C'est à ce moment-là que j'ai appris sa maladie. Il y a 2 ans, j'ai été diagnostiquée d'un cancer de l'ovaire et depuis, comme Michael, je suis devenue un citoyen du royaume des malades, parlant avec Susan Sontag. Comme Michael a lutté contre l'engourdissement provoqué par sa maladie en créant l'événement Turtle, j'ai commencé à dessiner un roman graphique sur le cours des événements en tant que personne atteinte de cancer. La maladie est le côté nocturne de la vie, une citoyenneté plus onéreuse. Toute personne née détient la double nationalité, dans le royaume du bien et dans le royaume de la maladie. Bien que nous préférions tous utiliser le bon passeport, tôt ou tard, chacun de nous est forcé, au moins pour un temps, de s'identifier comme citoyen de cet autre endroit. Susan Sontag, la maladie comme métaphore.
Dear Michael, this letter comes too late. Only later letters come to you now. But you might not resent it too much, since you are absolutely, entirely, and irremediably bathed in eternity. You have time, as you're not anymore inside time. And as you're not in space either, America and Europe might melt for once and let us meet in a no space, no time, no man's land. In these verses of Inger Christensen, for instance, these verses you offered me long ago, so generously, when we spent hours of the afternoon talking at Saint-Sulpice. The first I read from her, in the English translation by Susanna Knight. Later, later, I'll find snow. It's late, already spring. Dear Michael, if I stand alone in the snow, it is clear that I am a clock. How else would eternity find its way around? And I'll stand alone in the snow, making it clear that I am a clock, listening for your eternity while it goes its way around. And be sure that my standing will be a dance, Michael, a joyful dance for you. With love, Alice. P.S. As you always do, Please forgive my stammering English. Paris, March the 25th.
I recently lost a heel on this shoe, so I feel like I belong in a Shamberg video clip. New word video clip. Okay. Michael H. Shamberg, chairman shoot. I first met Michael H. Shamberg in the early 1980s when he came to film Fad Gadget performing. Oh yeah, Nick Cash played drums in Fad Gadget. He wasn't asked. His then partner, Stanton Miranda, asked me to play percussion and compose some songs with her. After a long gap, I got in touch again to find out he had been very near death and was quite ill with mitochondrial disease. He was in London setting up the first turtle salon at Chelsea Space. He asked my son Nathan, who was a painter, and myself to put in work for the exhibition. That simple act rekindled my interest in art making after a long hiatus, and also got Nathan noticed by Hannah Barry via Sean McDowell, the painter. Hannah Barry started her eponymous galleries soon after. In 2012, I was in New York with my son Nathan. We both had works in the Fad Gadgets exhibition, FG.FT, at Envoy Enterprises. I wanted to see MHS as I knew things were not too good and he said to come and visit. We took the train to Baltimore, which was a spur journey. Not too long and seats were spacious with plenty of legroom. When we arrived at Baltimore Station, I was stunned to see the beautiful architecture in a Beaux-Arts manner with doric columns and stained glass domes. Having watched The Wire, I was expecting a dilapidated, burnt-out building with boarded-up windows. MHS had arranged for Susanna Thornton to pick us up with Nancy Van Meter, friends and contributors to Turtle Salon. We drove to a grand old house that turned out to be the Schiller Art School, where NVM, Nancy Van Meter, was studying painting. For those that don't know, Schiller is a very traditional school where students study all aspects of painting and sculpture, from making pigments and mediums to bone and muscle structure in life drawing and painting. Nathan was very excited. He had not seen an art school with such a classical syllabus. I'm sure he could have imagined himself working in the large studio with classical sculptures, easels all about, and a vertiginous ceiling with skylight. We met MHS and he had deteriorated since last seeing him in 2006. Very unsure on his feet, he needed help to move about. His speech was very hard to make out, and I was only able to understand a couple of words in a sentence, having to guess what he was trying to communicate like a game of charades. At times of most frustration for the listener or himself, MHS would get out his trusty iPad and write something with one finger. Once that one thing had been communicated, he would put the pad away. At first I didn't understand why he didn't just use the tablet all the time, but came to realize that he was trying to train me to make sense of his utterances and noises. If I had spent a number of days with him, I think I would have got to learn his language. It was great hooking up with him again, and Nancy was a delightful host, showing us around the school and studio, later inviting us to her home for tea and to meet her two Scotties, bearded snifflers, as Nathan called them. Previous to going to USA, I had told MHS about a project I was doing, Chairman, which involved me being photographed in a chair-like position using crutches as back legs and having people sit on me. I asked if he would like to be a sitter. Now I was actually with him, and due to his obvious deterioration and frailty, I felt embarrassed to ask him to go ahead with it. I also thought that he may have forgotten the request or not felt up to it. However, he had not forgotten. He in fact brought it up. At first I ignored his suggestion, feeling slightly apprehensive for myself and Nancy/Susanna, one of whom would have to take the picture. He persisted and said we should do it. Nancy agreed to take the photo. Unfortunately, there were no crutches available, so I improvised with the chairs. We took our clothes off. MHS had these kind of disposable elastic pants on and weird strips of pink elastoplast, which can be seen on his back and leg. I later found out these help with muscle support and possibly to drain lymph, and is called kinesiology therapeutic tape. We took about 8 shots, and I selected this one because MHS is looking at the camera and is wearing his glasses, which gave him a scholarly, turtleish look. The classical plaster cast figures in the background set off the final composition. The Chairman photos are a series, the first being with my father Tony, who was still recovering from a double bypass operation, and some younger artist friends. When taking the shot with the others, they tend to just perch on my knees in a slightly prim manner, perfectly understandably. Michael just went in for it and sat right back in my lap so his balls hit my leg. Quite funny, in any other situation awkward as fuck. MVM was a trooper and we just got on with it. After the photo shoot, M said we had to go and have crab cakes. When we got to the quite ordinary looking diner, I was thinking we were going to have something bright orange, half an inch thick full of potatoes, but I was totally wrong. The cakes were sublime, full of moist crab meat and absolutely amazing. My one regret was letting MHS only order one portion for us. Don't want to lead viewers too much, but hopefully not stating the obvious, but one important idea in this series is about support, an antidote to Margaret Thatcher epithet, there is no such thing as society. Michael had given a lot of people, myself and Nathan included, a first step in showing work in an institution, namely Chelsea Space with Turtle Salon in 2006. We had reciprocated when he asked for work and I helped curate and physically transport the turtle from Paris to London and Harley Tree Gallery. He was very generous with the way he treated the rank outsiders and amateurs, mixing them in with well-established names in the art world. M was an intellectual and a great catalyst, always trying to get people to work together, but he also had a streak of the hustler. Getting things done sometimes required playing the game, talking things up. This was not done for pecuniary gain, but for the benefit of the project, whether it was a Turtle Salon event, a new order video, or making his own film. He once said, with only a modicum of regret, that had he been a salaryman for a film or music company, he would have been very well off. His sense of adventure, unwillingness to kowtow, and artistic integrity would not have allowed it to happen. Nick Cash, 2015.
À l'honneur, un extrait du journal de Michael Shamberg, un texte qu'il a écrit.
Sunday, November 13th, 2004. Mother died 5 years ago. Since then, she has had an unusual presence, twice. The first, when I found her name written on a card at the Lisbon airport. It was her maiden name, not common, especially in Portugal. And it was a card set alone beside a stack of empty-like forms used to contact next of kin and such in cases of emergency. The second time was in a bookshop near my home in New York. A friend was showing me images to illustrate ideas she had for my film. I went further through the monograph and found Mother standing alone on the 5th Avenue, looking up at the sky with a clock behind her. I recognized her immediately. The picture was dated 1948. She may have been pregnant with my sister Carol, or perhaps it is too early in the year. It was Mother who first told me that things come in threes. She was superstitious, in a happy, friendly way. But she often seemed to be right, and one could often count three-like things or events, good or bad. So now I have two extraordinary moments concerning Mother. There were a couple of times since that I thought might have been the third. But now I have an idea that the completion of the trilogy will depend on my helping to create it. And that, I suppose, may be found in the footage I have of Mother that I am about to edit. It will be the first time I look at what I shot when she was dying and when she was dead. Now I have a slightly heightened interest, a kind of feeling like a mad scientist, in that I could make some life of this material. But isn't that what we filmmakers do?
Mère, dimanche 13 novembre 2004. Mère est morte il y a 5 ans. Depuis, elle a eu une présence inhabituelle, 2 fois. La première fois, quand j'ai trouvé son nom inscrit sur une carte à l'aéroport de Lisbonne. C'était son nom de jeune fille, pas commun, en particulier au Portugal. Et c'était une carte seule à côté d'une pile de formulaires vides, utilisés pour communiquer avec les proches en cas d'urgence. La deuxième fois, c'était dans une librairie près de chez moi à New York. Une amie me montrait des images en vue d'illustrer des idées qu'elle avait pour mon film. En allant plus loin à travers la monographie, j'ai trouvé Mère debout seule, sur la 5e avenue, regardant le ciel avec une horloge derrière elle. Je l'ai reconnue immédiatement. L'image datait de 1948. Elle aurait pu être enceinte de ma sœur Carole, ou peut-être qu'il était trop tôt dans l'année. C'était mère qui m'avait dit que les choses venaient par trois. Elle était superstitieuse, d'une manière amicale et heureuse, mais elle semblait souvent avoir raison, et on pouvait souvent remarquer 3 choses ou événements liés, bons ou mauvais. Et maintenant, j'ai 2 moments extraordinaires concernant mère. Il m'est arrivé quelquefois depuis cela de penser que j'étais peut-être le 3e. Mais maintenant, j'ai l'idée que l'achèvement de la trilogie dépendra de mon aide à le créer. Et ça, je suppose, peut-être, trouver dans les images de mère que je suis sur le point d'éditer. Ce sera la première fois que je regarde ce que j'ai filmé quand elle se sentait un peu comme un scientifique fou, parce que j'ai réalisé que je pourrais faire un peu de vie de ce matériau. Mais n'est-ce pas ce que nous faisons, nous les cinéastes?
Yes. She's going to read a poem called Reading that was found inside of Michael Shamberg's journal and scrapbook. Ce poème a été trouvé dans le journal de Michael Shamberg.
It's so short, I'll just stand for it.
Okay.
Reading by Bei Dao. Taste the unnecessary tears. Your star stays alit still for one charmed day. A hand is birth's most expressive thing. The word changes, dancing in search of its roots. Read the text of summer, the moonlight from which that person drinks tea is the true golden age. For disciples of crowns in the ruins, all the subservient meanings, broke fingernails, all the growing smoke seeped into promises. Taste the unnecessary sea. The salt betrayed. Donc, Ismael and His Sisters évoque un monde à part, viscéral, de par son langage concentré, où la langue des signes est un pont entre l'extérieur et l'intérieur, prodiguant une forme physique à notre expérience de la vie. L'auteur explore l'interaction qui a lieu entre les forces puissantes qui nous habitent et celles obscures des éléments qui nous échappent, faisant état de l'océan hostile et sans fond dans lequel nous sommes tous empêtrés. Le roman traite du pouvoir des liens familiaux, des barrières que nous érigeons au nom du langage, des forces fondamentales et obscures qui menacent de nous accabler et avant toute chose de la condition humaine. Sur ce. Sous l'assemblée de la fiesta et sous le noir se trouvait le vivant. Il descendait et éclaboussait ensuite de manière décadente, presque au-delà du noir. Il réagissait. Il disait aux êtres vivants quoi faire. Puis il oubliait leur existence, retombant dans sa rougeur, puis remontait jusqu'à la ligne de fond du noir, une volute de fumée qui s'élevait avec persuasion. Et il y avait aussi des pieds, délicieusement bourrus, et au-dessus des pieds battait un cœur, battant comme un pendule, comme une main urgente s'agitant derrière le feu, le cœur où résidait l'humour et les humeurs qui résonnaient jusque dans le champ du rouge. Bientôt, le chant devenait un catalyseur dans leur cœur. Mais pour le moment, le rouge reculait, dessous le noir, là où seuls les animaux et leur intuition brute parvenaient à percevoir quoi que ce soit. Il avait atteint Ismael, robuste Ismael. Il le ramenait au malheur que sa grand-mère Alonza avait connu,
et les récits avec lesquels il avait grandi lui disaient ce qu'il fallait faire. Le monde et la terre tournaient et chancelaient autour de lui, fluctuant entre finesse et évidence, et il entraînait Ismael avec. Rosie l'avait décelé, elle voyait tout. La femme aux yeux verts était adossée sur le mur de béton, mais dans le dos, main dans le dos, chevilles croisées au-dessus des petits talons bleu azur, sertis d'un faux diamant autour de la boucle rectangulaire. Ismael avait remarqué que ses yeux étaient prudents, tout aussi brillants que ses chaussures. 2 hommes étaient assis à côté d'elle, l'un portant une casquette pailletée, un épais cou de taureau, d'une stupidité et d'une arrogance qu'Ismael connaissait bien. L'autre leva la tête et Ismael aperçut un étrange œil reptilien, jaune et vert à côté d'un œil marron. Les lignes tremblantes de tatouages de prison couraient le long de ses 2 bras, et les lignes les plus sûres de scorpion tatoué professionnellement venaient se terminer sur chaque main. L'œil de serpent était sans pitié et avait laissé une trace permanente dans les esprits d'Ismael et ses sœurs. Ismael ne savait pas où était passée la femme aux yeux d'émeraude. Ses yeux s'attardaient tout d'abord sur les gens près d'elle, puis sur ceux un peu plus éloignés d'elle, examinant, cernant, puis continuant leur chemin. Il voulait savoir. Mais les yeux se posèrent sur Ismael et restèrent un long moment sur lui. Et leur potentiel et leur éclat le rendirent courageux. Les hommes étaient allés ailleurs. Ismael voulait connaître le secret de ses yeux, et il se dirigea vers elle. L'auriculaire et le pouce de sa main devinrent une bouteille de bière, renversée vers sa bouche alors que l'index pointait vers elle. Ismael demandait si elle voulait un verre. Elle fit oui de la tête. Ismael mit la main dans sa poche à la recherche de pesos. Elle tremblait. 2 bières furent sorties de la glacière bleue et blanche du marchand. Il était adossé contre le mur à côté d'elle et le liquide descendit le long de leur gorge, dégageant toute crainte et culpabilité. La dureté qui recouvrait ses yeux émeraudes avait disparu, et Ismael sentit que ses yeux à lui se déverrouillaient, que quelque chose dans sa poitrine se libérait pleinement. En était-il de même pour elle? Pouvait-il en être de même? Il pointa vers la piste de danse et à nouveau elle fit oui de la tête. Son corps bougeait contre le sien et il savait que son émotion faisait écho en elle à travers le rythme et la chaleur, l'odeur rosée de sa chair. Il était heureux que la nuit fût et non pas le jour indiscret et clair. Elle virevoltait, sa jupe rouge créant une auréole autour d'elle, puis elle revenait vers lui. Au-dessus d'eux, une sève formait un voile électrique invisible qui, s'y-suivait du regard, d'une main à l'autre, d'un bras à l'autre, créait un chemin qui menait à travers chair, écailles, fourrure, chlorophylle, jusqu'au tréfonds intemporel du magma humain.
Rosie saw it as she saw everything. The green-eyed woman leant against the concrete wall, hands behind her back. Her ankles crossed above her tinny azure blue high heels, with rhinestones around the rectangular buckles. Ismael saw that her eyes were cautious and as glittery as her shoes. 2 men were next to her, one in a sequined baseball cap, his neck bull thick with a stupidity and arrogance that Ismael knew well. The other raised his head and Ismael saw a strange reptilian yellow and green eye next to a normal brown eye. The shaky lines of prison tattoos ran up both arms, and the firmer lines of professionally tattooed scorpions began on his forearms and ended on both hands. That snake eye was pitiless, and it dug a permanent place for itself in the minds of Ismael and his sisters. Ismael did not know where the woman's emerald eyes went. Her eyes stayed first on the people close to her, and then once further away, examining, summing up, moving on. He wanted to know, and the eyes landed on Ismael and rested on him a long while, and their potential and vibrance made him brave. The men had walked away somewhere. Ismael wanted to know the secret of these eyes, and so he walked her. The little finger and thumb of his hand became a beer bottle upended into his mouth, and with a forefinger pointing at her, Ismael asked if she would like a drink. She nodded. Ismael put his hand into his pockets for pesos, and it shook. 2 beers came out of the vendor's blue and white cooler. He stood against the wall next to her, and the liquid slid down both of their throats, dislodging worries and guilt. The hard coating of her eyes vanished, and Ismael felt his own eyes come unlocked and something grow fully loose in his chest. Was it mirrored in her? Could it be mirrored? He pointed to the dance floor, and again she nodded. Her body moved next to his, and he knew his emotion was reflected in the shared rhythm and the warm, rosy scent of her flesh. And he was glad it was not the bright, revealing day, but the concealing night. She spun, her red skirt making an aureole around her, and then she came back to him. All above them, sap invisibly caressed into a mantle of wattage that if you followed it hand over hand, arm over arm, would have made a way for you through flesh, scale, fur, chlorophyll, all down through the heat of the timeless foment at the bottom. Her small hand stayed in his as they danced, and she did not take it back.
She said, "Dear Michael, I am back in Fiji working on my Heart of Light film and staying with my old friend Dick Watling. His demise of a turtle is one of many stories from his Bei Dao, Tales of Fijian Wildlife. I thought you might appreciate it. The traditional ceremonial calling of turtles on the island of Katavao in southern Fiji still takes place. It is good that Turtle is here to call up memories of you. With love, Cynthia."
So I'll just read the introduction. It's 6 pages long. Demise of a turtle. A leathery turtle, one of the world's endangered species, strays into Fiji waters. The first one seen for many years. A welcome visitor? No, its visit is short-lived. It is speared, killed, and eaten. And in January, too, a month when the killing of all turtles is prohibited by law. Wednesday should have been a happy day. My first sight of a leathery turtle in Fiji, but it wasn't. Firstly, I only saw the poor creature's picture in the paper, and secondly, it was dead. Speared in the neck, dragged by 2 punts for 2 miles, as much meat as 2 bullocks. What made it worse is that this was January, when all turtles are officially protected, their closed season. Of course, one can hardly blame the villagers of Homa, because the closed season for turtles must be one of Fiji's best-kept secrets. On paper, the legislation is formidable, a remarkable example of advanced thinking when it was first decreed decades ago, and designed to ensure that generations of Fijians to come could savor turtle meat. No person during the month of January, February, November, and December in any year shall in any way molest or take or kill any turtle of any size. No person shall at any time dig up, use, take, or destroy turtle eggs of any species. The export of turtle flesh is banned. All turtles of shell length less than 18 inches are protected. This could be real killjoy stuff, almost to go without the bit of turtle steak during the festive season. But provision is made for this. Turtles can be captured outside the closed season and kept penned for the pot at Christmas. Why the legislation is not enforced, I do not know. The authorities have progressed to enforcing, well, sometimes, a ban on the sale of turtle meat, but beyond that, aeons of traditional slaughter hold sway. I have given up wondering about the fate of our turtles, and no doubt the turtles have too. Perhaps that is why they shed so many tears. Mitochondrie, écrit par Eiji Suzu, pour Michael Shamberg. Défendre là, à part soi, votre encéphale fait une distinction claire et en fait entrer. Maîtriser l'illusion qui tente de pénétrer au lieu de déborder. L'image où la lésion s'accumule couvre le ciel où vous levez les yeux. Anticorps qui prolifèrent le sourire des mitochondries. Le turtle, à 10 000 années, au fond de la mer, fait mûrir la tortue qui l'a avalée. Enfin, c'est le sommeil qui n'explose pas, qui est devenu relique à sa mort. La méthode de l'art attaque, en l'espèce, le mécanisme de la maladie. Les yeux voyants s'écrasent à l'intérieur, le réveil vers une vie quotidienne. Quelques fois après, elles commencent leur vie, les mitochondries. La racine de l'art qui trouble l'harmonie préétablie de la maladie et les combats des rues. À la prière humaine qui vit avec le turtle, qui mérite de mentionner sa profondeur. Vous écrivez l'épitaphe vivante au sanctuaire de sa migration secrète.
Okay. I will now read it in English, obviously. Mitochondria by Eiji Suzu, is that correct? From Michael H. Shamberg. Defend, there, privately, your brain. Makes a clear distinction and calls it inside. Control the illusion which attempts to get into the stead to flood. The image where the lesion accumulates covers the sky you look up to. Antibody that proliferates the mitochondria's smile. The turtle, at 10,000 years, at the bottom of the sea, makes mature the turtle that he swallowed. At last, it is sleep which doesn't explode, which became the relic at his death. The method of art attack, relatively, the mechanism of illness. The looking eyes are broken inside, the awakening toward a certain daily life. Sometimes later, they begin their lives, the mitochondria, the root of the art that disturbs the pre-established harmony of the illness and the street fighting. At the human prayer, which lives with the turtle, that is worth mentioning its deepness. You write down a live epitaph at the sanctuary of one's secret migration.